Hi everyone, welcome to this teaching on pronouns in healthcare. This is particularly in response to LGBT History Month, where HEAL has been handing out pronoun pins at Heath campus, which has been really successful. If you didn't manage to get one, they give them out for free at the Students' Union, so feel free to go along and grab one. And in this talk, we'll be talking about why it's important for you to consider wearing one when you're on placement. I'm Rachel, I'm the president of HEAL Society, and I use she, her pronouns. And I put together this leaflet to help explain what pronouns are and why they are important. So let's get started, okay? First of all, what are pronouns? Pronouns are words that we use to refer to ourselves or to other people. So they are a word that's used in place of where you might use a noun. For example, instead of saying, Jane went to the shops, you might say, oh, she went to the shops. Or did somebody leave their jacket here, instead of saying a name in place of that. There are various different types of pronouns, and they include I, me, or she, her, he, him, or they, them. And for some people, pronouns are a very important way to express gender identity. In fact, this is the case for most people. Their pronouns are what they use to express their own gender identity. Some people say that they struggle to use they as a singular pronoun because they think it means more than one person, so a plural, which it can do, but it also has actually been used as a single pronoun, earliest recorded in 1375. And we use it in everyday language. I used it in the sentence just before when I said they believe that you can't use they as a singular pronoun. For example, someone leave their jacket behind. But you would usually use that in the context of saying, oh, well, I don't know whether it was a man or a woman who left their jacket behind. But for some people, if they identify as neither man nor woman, or as non-binary, or gender non-conforming, they is a pronoun that these people feel suits them better. People do struggle to incorporate they, them pronouns into everyday language, and it's usually just because you're not used to doing that. But if you start practicing it, it honestly does come very easily. Some people do use more than one set of pronouns to refer to themselves. So like he, they, or she, they, or he, she. This can be because people feel that either term identifies with their gender identity. And if someone does disclose to you that they use these pronouns, you can use either pronoun interchangeably. So you could say, oh, my friend, he went to the shops and he bought this, and they were really happy that they bought this. Generally, whichever one is first is their preference. So some people may use they, she, and that means that you should refer to them as they, them as often as more often than she, but that's not the case for everyone. So again, just have an open, honest conversation with your patient or your friend or your colleague about which they prefer you to use. Generally, though, you should make an effort to use both, and we'll talk about why that is. The underlying message here in this talk is that using a person's correct pronouns isn't that hard, but it can make all the difference to how a patient or colleague feels. I think this can be put simply in terms of if you are a cis woman or a cis man and someone called you she or he the wrong way around, some people might find that quite offensive. And I think that's how you should view it with all pronouns. It's just a mutual mark of respect, really. And it's basically been established that using the correct pronouns for someone is vital in helping them establish their gender identity and feel more comfortable in all situations. And like I said, it's really not that hard. Okay. So why should you use the correct pronouns for your patient in healthcare? Identity contributes to a patient's self-esteem and their sense of worth. And ultimately, this plays a vital role in their positive mental health. If you have to endure disrespect and discrimination regularly by people not using the correct pronouns, it's been shown that that does have significant health consequences over a lifetime. this is documented in all forms of discrimination, including discrimination with race, disability, sexuality, and gender. That if you are constantly battling those discriminative behaviors, that negative health consequences do occur as a result. So from the same study, on a superficial level, pronoun usage may appear to be just a social pleasantry that has little impact on service delivery, but it's actually fundamental in social interactions that has the power to effectively challenge systemic inequalities and diminish some of those barriers that patients have when accessing healthcare. There are some rather shocking statistics that have been developed, that have been discovered about the barriers that trans people face when accessing healthcare, and sharing your pronouns with those patients can show that you're empathetic to their struggle and encourages a trans inclusive environment within healthcare. So what that means is, if you're wearing a pronoun pin that indicates to other people what pronouns you may like to use, a trans person or a non-binary person or somebody who does not use the pronouns that may be immediately assumed by a healthcare professional, if you're wearing yours, it can show to them that you understand that that can be a big barrier for them. And it just creates an environment where people feel more open to disclose which pronouns you'd prefer for them to use them. And as is obviously understood, if the patient feels more comfortable to open up to you, they're more likely to give you an accurate history, and you're more likely to get an accurate diagnosis and ultimately treat them better as a more holistic individual. The other key point is that it's a big way to show trans allyship. How people refer to us and view us is a very personal experience. Using someone's name is, as we know, a basic courtesy. We're all taught to introduce ourselves at the beginning of consultations and check that you've got the right patient and that you're calling them by their correct name. For example, most people start history taking or interactions with patients with, oh, your name, I see your name here is John Smith. Is it all right if I call you John? Or would you prefer if I called you Mr. Smith? And that is a very basic way of ensuring that there's a mutual respect between patients and the healthcare provider, and that extends to pronouns. I think what can be misunderstood is that for someone who's never had to worry about what pronouns others use to refer to them, using gender pronouns may not seem that important. For example, if you are a cis man and you've always used he, him pronouns, it may seem foreign to you to consider sharing your pronouns, and that's understandable because it's not part of your lived experience. But for those who are constantly misgendered, the experience of being misgendered can be harmful, angering, and make you feel alienated. And obviously, that is not what you want in a healthcare setting. And it can lead to communication breakdown and is ultimately detrimental to patient rapport. If you immediately start the consultation by misgendering your patient, they are not going to be as willing to open up to you, trust you, or think that you have the experience and expertise to understand their life experience or what they need from the healthcare provider in that setting. And that can be for anything. That can be in A&E, in a GP surgery. It's all communication with patients is about building a rapport. And if you have misgendered them or use the wrong name for them, that immediately creates a dent in that rapport. This quote here is quite nice. Using an individual's correct pronouns in a healthcare setting gives the person the signal that it is safe to bring all parts of themselves to the healthcare setting, and that it is all of them that is being seen. So, a few tips to help you incorporate pronouns into your day-to-day practice. Hopefully, the reasons discussed will convince you that that is something you should consider doing. The first one is to introduce yourself. We are all taught to do this before we go on placement with the "Hello, my name is" campaign. We all wear badges that say "Hello, my name is," and I think it's important that you could consider introducing yourself as "Hello, my name is, and my pronouns are." The second thing is to always ask, what are your pronouns, or can you remind me of which pronouns you'd like me to use, are two very easy and safe ways to ensure your patient feels that they can open up to you and that you're empathetic to their situation. If you're not sure, you can always use neutral pronouns until you know the patient or which ones they prefer to be used by. So Obviously, at some point, you would need to work out what pronouns they prefer to use. But if you are unsure, you could just refer to them as they for the interim period, or you could just refer to them by their name. So my patient John, they're complaining of chest pain, and that way you haven't slipped up or misgendered them and made them feel uncomfortable in that setting. The third thing, and I think this is a really important point, is to apologize. If you do make a mistake and misgender your patient, as I said, that can be detrimental to patient rapport, but an apology goes a long way. So just say, oh, I'm really sorry. And then just move on, because I think if you dwell on the point, it makes you feel uncomfortable, but most importantly, it makes your patient feel uncomfortable. And just do your best to build back on that rapport by, as it says there, the best apology is to not make the same mistake again. There really is no excuse for if your patient has corrected you and told you their correct pronouns to then still make the same mistake. Just think before you speak, basically. And yeah, the best apology is really just don't make the same mistake again. And tip number 4 is to demonstrate allyship. As discussed, if you wear a pronoun pin, it's a perfect way to demonstrate to your patient that you're an ally. And it's also a really good way to ensure that everyone else knows your pronouns without anyone having to ask. And overall, this just creates a nice environment where there are subtle indicators that this is a trans inclusive space. The other ways to do this are in an email signature. A lot of people sign off saying, oh, yours sincerely, John, I use he, him pronouns. And it's quite a common thing to see now in email signatures. The other thing, of course, is to have gender inclusive forms. So it's quite well documented that in healthcare, a lot of the time you have to fill in sort of, am I male, am I female? Some of them now have, is your gender identity the same as you were assigned at birth? But I think there is scope for this to go a lot further, and a lot of forms are still very binary in the way that they make the patient describe their sex or their gender. And so if you want to take your allyship even further, if you're working in a healthcare practice where you notice this on a form, bring it up and challenge it, because it's not the practice that is recommended anymore, and it is certainly not the best practice for a lot of patients. So really challenge it. And challenging also goes to if you hear a healthcare professional misgender another patient, to correct them, because they may not know, and you are in the know of what that patient's pronouns are, and it would prevent that healthcare provider from misgendering the patient and giving them an uncomfortable experience when accessing healthcare. Okay, so that was a really quick rundown on why pronouns are important in healthcare. As always, if you have any questions about this, you can email us. We are heal@cardiff.ac.uk, or I'm much better at answering the Instagram, which is LGBTHeath. And if you found this talk interesting and you'd like some more tips on how to make your practice more inclusive for LGBT patients, LGBTQ plus patients, we've got a couple of other videos up on our Heal YouTube channel, and well, we'll hopefully have a lot more soon. Thank you very much for listening. Have a nice day.